I'm James Lynch, and this is my stock report for UFC Macau, taking a look at the biggest winners and losers from the event. And the thumbnail always gives it away. What a performance by Petr Yan. He's got to be the biggest stock riser on this card, getting a unanimous decision victory over Deiveson Figueiredo. Figueiredo had a nice win streak coming into this one. And I know Yan was favored. He was actually pretty much of a heavy favorite, but he certainly looked like it. If you look at the stats from this fight, a lot of Yan here. First round a little bit slower, but the rest of the fight, very much Petr Yan's. A lot of really good things in this fight, and really looked like a contender. I mean, we forget that he is, obviously the former bantamweight champion, but really put on the type of performance that makes you want to see him in that contender spot. So he probably won't get the title shot next. Should be going to Umar Nurmagomedov, but I think at the very least, Petr Yan not that far behind. Wouldn't actually mind a rematch with him and Corey Sandhagen at this point. I know Sandhagen's coming off a loss, but both guys with full camps. I'm curious to see how that one would go. But big one there for Petr Yan. We'll talk a little bit later about Deiveson Figueiredo, but Petr Yan has to be the biggest stock riser on this card because he is right now in that contender spot with a really impressive victory. Now, as far as the other two stock risers on this card, and I have an honorable mention as well, or actually I have a few honorable mentions. This I went more, not so with the context, but more so the performance. And Gabriela Fernandez, you even saw that she gets the bonus there. Huge upset over Kong Wang. Remember, a lot of people felt like, oh, Wang has that win over Valentina. She's going to be a threat. Well, it doesn't matter because she lost this fight. She was a huge favorite going into this fight, minus 950. Gabriela Fernandez knocks her down, gets the rear naked choke victory. Huge victory for Gabriela Fernandez. This was one of the big highlights of this card. You can't ignore stuff like this. Again, I didn't think much of Fernandez going into this fight as far as, her placement in the division, but this is a very big win for her. Again, a lot of hype behind Wang going into this one, and now she's got back-to-back victories, goes to 2-2 in the UFC, so this is big for her because, she loses this fight. There could have been a case of cutting her. That would have been 3 losses in her last 4. So Gabriela Fernandez, if you haven't seen the submission win, go check it out. Obviously, this card was on early in the morning, but huge win for her there, and one of the best submission wins we've seen in a while. That was very, very, very impressive from Gabriela Fernandez. And again, same sort of thing here with this next pick as far as a stock riser. I've got to go with Shea Ming. What a win that was, or Ming Shi. I don't know how you say it, but that head kick knockout, something you don't see too often in women's MMA. I mean, that was very impressive. If you haven't seen it, again, go check this out here. I didn't know a whole lot about her going into this fight, because again, this was part of the tournament, the road to the UFC. But she looked outstanding in this finish. 30 years old, again, road to the UFC fighter, so I haven't really watched a lot of that, but yeah, this is the type of win that people are going to remember. Also, like the post-fight speech, I mean, she was definitely someone that caught the attention of this card, and again, earns herself a performance bonus, and obviously wins the tournament finals as well. So Shea Ming, definitely someone to keep in mind after this card, because she made a lot of noise, not only with the finish, but I liked her speech after as well. Okay, couple honorable mentions, not as flashy, but big wins for the context of their divisions. That's sort of the next two that I'm going with. The first one is Yan Xiaonan. I actually saw a few people picking Tabitha Ricci. Yan Xiaonan, I know she lost her last fight, but she was in control of this entire matchup. I know she's a little bit on the older side at 35, but this is a big win for her. Sort of keeps her in that contender spot. Tabitha Ricci falling short. Again, she's trying to break through to that contender spot. Doesn't get it done here. Nice win here for Yan Xiaonan. Not the most exciting fight in the world, but definitely one that will move her up the weight class. And definitely got to mention as well, Carlos Ulberg. Where is he here? Why am I skipping right past him here? Yeah, there we go. Carlos Ulberg getting a decision. Would have been better. I mean, he probably would have been one of my stock risers if he got the knockout. I think if you thought Ulberg was going to win, that's kind of the way you thought, because we have seen Ozdemir knocked out before. But nonetheless, very good performance from him. He calls out Khalil Roundtree. I think that's a perfect fight. Of course, Ulberg was supposed to fight Jamal Hill before Jamal Hill was supposed to fight him. He was supposed to fight Khalil Roundtree. Jamal Hill was. So I think that makes a ton of sense. Ulberg and Khalil Roundtree run that fight. And, again, he looked good for a minus 230 favorite. This is a big win for him. A lot of people had some question marks, including myself. Those were answered in this fight. I thought Ulberg looked great in this one. Even though he didn't finish, I think we still got to acknowledge the fact that that's a good win for him in the division. Ozdemir, again, a ranked opponent. That always looks good on the resume. Okay, let's get to some of the stock droppers on this card. The first one I mentioned there, I already spoke about her already, but it's Kong Wang. And perhaps this is a bit unfair because she's only got her second UFC fight. But again, a lot of the fans, a lot of people were hyping her up. I saw a lot of people picking her by knockout. That doesn't happen here. 32 years old. This is a big setback for her. I know, again, only 2 UFC fights, but as someone who's a bit older in the weight class, you got to win fights like this. And again, it's just the thing is that people are going to remember her getting finished now. So that's going to set her back a bit. I think by the time she moves up in the weight class, I don't think Valentina is going to be around anymore. So, the potential of seeing a rematch there is further and further back. And so I think this was a big setback here for Kong Wang. And, not necessarily her fault, but again, minus 950 favorite, and you don't get it done. That's really tough to come back from. So Kong Wang, my biggest stock dropper on this card. The second biggest stock dropper here, again, we're going more with optics, but also the fight itself. I think people thought Deiveson Figueiredo would put up a better fight here. But he's got to be the second biggest stock dropper on this card because he had a nice win streak in his last couple fights, right? He had 3 straight wins. There were people arguing that he should have deserved the title shot over Umar, which I don't agree with, but because again, I think this is an easier run than Corey. Let's put it this way. All these wins are not as good as Corey Sandhagen. That was my argument going into this. And it showed tonight. Look, Figueiredo, I think if you are a contender in this weight class, you got to have a closer fight with Petr Yan than what he had tonight. He didn't get finished, but 36 years old, like where does he go from here, right? I think flyweight's in the rearview mirror. He has a tough time making the weight. This is a key loss here. I think he was better off, I think, taking the Corey Sandhagen fight, which apparently, according to Corey, he turned down. But tough setback there for Deiveson Figueiredo, who now loses his first fight at 135 since moving up from the loss to Brandon Moreno. So Deiveson Figueiredo, this is more of a context one, big stock dropper on this card. And the last one, I mentioned her as well. On this breakdown already, was Tabitha Ricci. This I thought was a moment for her to break through and get into that contender spot. She doesn't do that. I thought Yan Xiaonan clearly won this fight, and she had 2 straight wins. Now she's 2-2 in her last 4 fights, although that fight with Lupi was a lot closer. Just a tough setback for her. She's 29. There's a possibility of her, maybe using this and going on a bit of a run after, but that's a tough loss against a good opponent here in Yan Xiaonan, who's a lot older than her. I thought Tabitha Ricci, bit of a stock dropper on my books, just in terms of where she fits in the division in a moment that she couldn't break through. Another stock dropper we got to talk about is an honorable mention. I didn't put him on here. It's Volkan Ozdemir. More so for the fact that, again, 35 years old. I picked him to win this fight. He didn't look very good tonight, in my opinion. And that 2-fight win streak is in the rearview mirror. He's now also 2-2 in his last 4 fights. So I don't really know where he goes from here as far as losing this fight. I think at this point, it's about giving guys on the come up an opportunity to fight him and use him to build their name off of, I think is the best way for Volkan as far as him losing this. But Volkan's got no time, but Father Time is not on his side here as he's 35, going to be 36 next year. Tough loss there as he can't seem to break through sort of the pack. Like he can beat your Johnny Walkers and Guskovs, but you can't beat these ranked guys. That's a tough look there for Volkan Ozdemir. So again, quickly just to recap as far as the stock droppers and stock risers, Petr Yan, Gabriela Fernandez, and Shea Ming. Honorable mentions go to Yan Xiaonan and Carlos Ulberg. Stock droppers are Kong Wang, Deiveson Figueiredo, and Tabitha Ricci. Honorable mention going to Volkan Ozdemir. Let me know in the comments what you think, which way you guys are leaning here. Again, I always say this, it would be great if you guys just give me your top 3 stock risers, top 3 stock droppers, and we can debate that. No need to nitpick at my picks. Again, I know there's a lot of different criteria as far as, how people view stock. Some people like to go with what the fans thought of the fight. Some people go with, different things. For me, it's a lot about how did you lose and where are you in the division and where does this loss affect you or win affect you in the division. That's kind of how I like looking at things. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.